They say there are two things a Nightborn wolf is taught from the moment she can understand language. The first is this: your pack is your blood, your breath, your reason for existing. You live for the pack. You die for the pack. You never, not even in your darkest, most secret dreams, betray the pack. The second is simpler, and somehow, far more brutal. You stay away from the Ashcroft wolves. That's it. That's the whole law. No explanation. No trial. No mercy. Just 5 words, carved into the soul of every Nightborn child like a scar you're born with. Stay away from the Ashcroft wolves. My name is Anna Nightborn. I am 23 years old. I am the Alpha's daughter. I am the girl who was raised to be unbreakable, untouchable, and absolutely, unequivocally loyal. And I fell in love with John Ashcroft. I didn't mean to. God, or whatever gods watch over things like us, I promise you I didn't mean to. But love, I've learned, doesn't ask for permission. It doesn't check bloodlines. It doesn't read the old laws written in ash and bone. It doesn't care that your families have been trying to kill each other for 300 years. It just arrives. Like he did. On a Tuesday morning. In a coffee shop. In a city that was supposed to be neutral ground. This is the story of how I broke every rule I was ever given. How I loved someone I was forbidden to love. And how that love, beautiful and terrifying and completely impossible, nearly destroyed everything. Nearly. Let me take you back to the beginning. Act 1, The Encounter. I had been in Portland for 3 days, and I was already tired of pretending to be human. That's the thing they never tell you in the old stories about wolves. The hardest part isn't the transformation. It's not the hunger, or the full moon, or the weight of the pack bond pulling at the back of your skull like a thread you can never cut. The hardest part is existing in a city where 9 million humans walk past you every day and have absolutely no idea what you are. I was there on assignment. My father, Alpha Callum Nightborn, the most feared wolf on the West Coast, had sent me to meet with a property lawyer about the old Cascade territories. Land disputes. Pack business. Deeply boring pack business that I had drawn the short straw to handle because my brother Eli had conveniently come down with what he called a stomach illness and what I called cowardice. The meeting wasn't until 10. It was 8:15. I needed coffee like I needed oxygen, and the hotel's brew tasted like someone had filtered water through sadness and paper. So I walked 3 blocks to a place called Ember and Grounds. Small. Warm. The kind of coffee shop that smelled like roasted beans and cinnamon and something almost like home. I pushed open the door. The bell chimes. Quiet acoustic music in the background. The line was 6 people deep. I joined it, staring at my phone, scrolling through documents my father's lawyer had sent me. Easement rights on the Northern Ridge. Water access agreements. Boundary markers dating back to 1962. My eyes glazed over somewhere around paragraph 4. That's when I smelled it. Pine. Dark river water. And underneath that, something warmer. Cedar, maybe. Or smoke from a bonfire that had burned down to embers. A scent that had no business being in a Portland coffee shop at 8 in the morning, because it was unmistakably, undeniably wolf. My whole body went still. Not a Nightborn wolf. I knew every one of our scents the way you know the voices of your family. This was something different. Something that my instincts tried to classify as threat before my brain had even caught up. I looked up slowly. Carefully. The way you look around a room when you want to see without being seen. He was 2 people ahead of me in line. Tall. Dark hair, a little too long, curling slightly at the base of his neck. Broad shoulders under a gray Henley that had seen better days. He had his hands in his jeans pockets and he was looking at the menu board with the focused expression of someone who had not yet had coffee and was deeply unsure about what to do with themselves. He hadn't noticed me yet. I had 2 options. I could leave. Walk out, go back to my hotel, drink the sad paper coffee, and chalk this up to bad luck and the universe's terrible sense of humor. Or I could stay, because I was a Nightborn wolf and I did not run from things unless I was ordered to. I stayed. He ordered a black coffee, no sugar, and a blueberry scone. The barista spelled his name wrong on the cup. I watched him glance at it, see the word John written in black marker, and decide it wasn't worth the correction. He tucked himself into the corner near the window, opened a dog-eared paperback, and completely ignored the world. I ordered my drink, an oat milk latte with an extra shot, before you judge me, and then I did something I still cannot fully explain. I sat down at the table next to him. There were 4 other open tables. I chose the one that put me 18 inches away from a wolf whose pack had been drawing blood from mine since before my grandmother was born. The rational part of my brain was having an absolute crisis. The rest of me was curious. In that deep, cellular way that goes past thought into something older. He didn't look up from his book for 4 minutes. I know because I was watching, in my peripheral vision, while pretending to review the property documents on my phone. Then he turned a page, paused, and his head tilted, just slightly. The way a wolf goes still when they catch a new scent. He looked up. Green eyes. I wasn't prepared for green eyes. They found mine immediately, which meant he'd already tracked me. Already knew exactly where I was. His expression was careful and completely unreadable in the way that only someone trained to hide their reactions can manage. I held his gaze. I didn't look away, because Nightborn wolves don't look away. He said, quietly, in a voice that was low enough that no human in the room could have heard it, "You know what I am." "Yes," I said. "And you sat down next to me anyway." "The other tables were farther from the window," I said. "I like the light." He looked at me for a long moment. Then the corner of his mouth moved. Not quite a smile. More like the ghost of one, trying to decide whether it was allowed to exist. "Fair enough," he said, and looked back at his book. We sat in silence for 11 minutes. I know, because I kept checking the time, telling myself I should leave. Then he laughed. Not at me, at his book. A short, involuntary sound, immediately suppressed. He pressed his lips together like he was trying to put it back. "What are you reading?" I asked, before I could stop myself. He turned the cover toward me. "A battered copy of Good Omens." "I've read that 4 times, I said. He raised an eyebrow. "How many times did you laugh at the same parts?" "Every single time," I said. And that was it. That was the moment. Not fireworks. Not thunder. Just a wolf with green eyes and a worn-out paperback, and me, laughing at the same ridiculous passages about an angel and a demon trying to stop the apocalypse. The irony is not lost on me. It never was. He told me his name was John. I told him mine was Anna. Neither of us gave our last names. We both knew why, and we both pretended we didn't. I stayed until 9:45. The longest and most dangerous coffee I have ever drunk in my life. When I stood up to leave, he looked at me and said, "It was good to meet you, Anna." "You too," I said. And then I walked out into the gray Portland morning, stood on the sidewalk for 30 seconds, breathing cold air, and told myself, firmly, clearly, with all the conviction I could muster, that I was never going back to that coffee shop. I went back the next morning. Act 2, Falling. Sound, rain on windows. Coffee shop ambience, slightly busier now. My meeting had gone fine, which meant I technically had no further reason to stay in Portland. I could have driven back to the Nightborn compound in the Cascades that same afternoon. Instead, I called my father and told him there were complications. There were no complications. What there was, a tall wolf reading Good Omens in a coffee shop, and something in my chest that felt less like danger and more like recognition. Like finding a door in a wall you thought was solid. He was there when I arrived. Same Warren Henley. A different book, I squinted at the spine, Norse mythology. Neil Gaiman again. I filed this away as information about him. Not a threat. Not yet. Just a data point. He saw me come in. This time, I saw him see me. There was a flicker in his eyes, something that might have been surprise, or relief, or both, that he controlled very quickly. I collected my coffee and sat down across from him without asking. "You came back," he said. "The light is still good," I said. He smiled properly this time. It was a devastating thing, that smile. Like the sun coming out from behind a mountain. I catalogued it under dangerous and kept my face very still. We talked for 2 hours. Not about wolves. Not about packs or territories or blood feuds. We talked about books. He'd read everything I had and several things I hadn't, and he had opinions about all of them, strong and specific and sometimes completely wrong in ways I found deeply entertaining. We talked about cities. He'd grown up near Seattle, moved around a lot, hated the phrase rain is good for the soul with a passion that I respected. We talked about the strange, specific loneliness of living between two worlds. Human enough to walk through the city unnoticed. Wild enough that the walls sometimes felt like they were closing in. "Do you ever just want to run?" he asked, staring out at the rain-dark street. "Always," I said. He looked back at me, and something passed between us that had no name and needed none. Soft pause. Rain intensifies briefly, then settles. We didn't talk about our families for 3 days. 3 days of coffee in the morning, walks along the waterfront. Dinner at a Thai place near Powell's Books where John ate enough food to alarm the waiter and I pretended not to notice because I was doing the exact same thing. Wolf metabolism is an extraordinary and terrible gift. On the 4th day, he said it. Not an accusation. Not a threat. Just quietly, sitting on a bench near the river. "Your last name is Nightborn, isn't it?" Not a question. I looked at the water for a long time. "Yes," I said. Silence. Long enough to hear the river and the traffic and my own pulse, which had gone very steady in the way it does when I'm bracing for something. "I'm John Ashcroft," he said. I closed my eyes for 3 seconds. "I know. I've known since the first morning." "So have I," he said. Another silence. Different quality this time. Heavier. "What are we doing?" I asked. Not accusingly. Genuinely. He turned to look at me and his expression was open in a way I hadn't seen before. The careful trained blankness was gone. He just looked tired. And honest. And afraid of the same things I was afraid of. "I don't know," he said. "But I don't want to stop." A breath. Slow, unsteady. I should have said, "We have to." I should have stood up, walked away, called my father, and put 600 miles between me and John Ashcroft and whatever this terrible, wonderful thing was. I should have. "Neither do I," I said. Music shifts, something low and bittersweet. That was day 4. We had 12 more. 12 days of stolen mornings and long evenings that went on too long because neither of us wanted to be the one to leave. 12 days of learning someone in the deep way you only learn a person when you know the stakes are high and the time is borrowed. I learned that John made his coffee wrong, too hot, steeped too long. He freely admitted it tasted like charcoal and didn't seem to care. That he had 3 older brothers and none of them knew where he was, which meant he was lying to his pack by omission the same way I was. That he'd been to college in Boston, studying environmental law, and still kept a notebook full of case arguments he'd never filed. That he laughed quietly and rarely, but when he did it was completely unguarded, like he forgot to be careful. I learned that he'd seen people die in the war between our packs. His cousin. A boy he'd grown up running with in the woods north of Seattle. He didn't tell me this as a wound he was offering or a warning he was giving. He told me the way you tell someone a true thing because keeping it feels dishonest. "I've seen it too," I said. One of our packmates. She was 19. He didn't say he was sorry in the hollow way people do. He just said, I know. I'm sorry anyway. That was the night I understood that I was in serious trouble. Pause. On the 8th day, I told him about my brother Eli. My best friend until he became the pack's golden boy and started looking at me like I was a liability. About my mother, who died when I was 12, a territorial fight that went wrong. About growing up knowing I was the alpha's daughter, which meant I was a symbol before I was a person. He listened the way that good people listen. Without filling the silences. Without reaching for a silver lining that wasn't there. What do you want? He asked when I went quiet. Not what does your pack want? Not what does your father expect? Just, what do you want, Anna? As if I were a person and not a position. I'd been asked so few times in my life that I almost didn't know the answer. I want to live like this for a while, I said, surprising myself with the honesty of it. Just like this. Where nobody knows who I am. He looked at me for a long moment. You're in luck, he said quietly. Because that's exactly what I want too. Beat. The city sounds soften. We kissed for the first time on day 10. On the waterfront. In the rain. Because the universe apparently has a flair for clichés when it wants to make a point. It was not a careful kiss. It was the kind of kiss that happens when two people have been pretending they're not going to kiss for 10 days and finally stop pretending. It tasted like coffee and the particular sweetness of something you've wanted for longer than you can justify. When I pulled back, he was looking at me with an expression I recognized from the mirror. That specific combination of everything and terrified. We can't do this, I said. I know, he said. And then we did it anyway. Act 3, The Reckoning. A phone ringing. Once. Twice. Wind outside. My father called on day 14. I saw his name on the screen and my stomach dropped through the floor. It was mid-morning. I was sitting across from John at the coffee shop that had become, without either of us deciding it, ours. He saw my expression change and went still. I answered. My father's voice has a particular quality, a density, like stone that has been weathered by centuries. He's been alpha for 30 years. He has the voice of a man who says things once. Anna. Dad. I kept my voice even. Come home, he said. The meeting ran long. I didn't say your meeting. I said come home. Today, Anna. Before dark. He hung up. Silence. Then the sound of a coffee cup being set down carefully. I looked at John. He was watching me with those green eyes that missed nothing. He knows? John asked. I don't know. Maybe. Probably. I pressed my hands flat on the table. He finds out everything eventually. It's kind of his whole thing. John said nothing for a moment. Then, does he know my name? Not yet. But if he found out I was here this long for no reason, he'll start looking. I met John's eyes. And your family? Something shifted in his face. Not quite pain. More like resignation. My brother Marcus has been calling every day for a week. I haven't been answering. We looked at each other across the small table in the coffee shop that smelled like cinnamon and burned good beans, and the reality of what we'd been pretending could stay in Portland settled over us like smoke. We knew this was coming, I said. Yes, he said. So what do we do? He reached across the table and took my hand. He held it in both of his, like it was something he was trying to memorize. Come back, he said. After you go home. Come back, or let me find you. Don't let this be the last time I see you. My voice, quieter now, with the weight of everything it carries. I wanted to say yes immediately, the way you want to say things when you're 23 and in love for the first time with someone who looks at you like you're a whole world they didn't know existed. But I am my father's daughter, raised on strategy before sentiment. And I could see every possible future branching out from that moment, and most of them were soaked in blood. If they find out, I said slowly. If either of our families finds out, this isn't just exile, John. In the old laws, this is a killing offense. For both of us. He didn't flinch. I know the old laws. And you still want to? I want to, he said, and his voice was very quiet and completely certain. I know what I'm asking. I know the cost. I'm still asking. A long breath. The decision settling. Then I'll come back, I said. I drove home to the Cascades with my heart in two places at once. Sound, a car engine. Rain-slicked highway. Trees passing in the dark. My father was waiting in the main hall when I arrived. That alone told me something was wrong. My father doesn't wait for people. People wait for him. He looked at me for a long time before he spoke. You were in Portland for 14 days. The meeting took one. I needed time. To think. To breathe. I found the city. Don't, he said. Just that. Flat and quiet. I stopped. I don't know what you were doing in Portland, he said. And I'm choosing not to find out tonight. But Anna, whatever it was, you end it. Now. Completely. Do you understand me? He didn't know about John. He couldn't know about John. But he knew something. He always knew something. Yes, I said, because I am my father's daughter and I was raised to say yes. I went upstairs. I stared at the ceiling. And I texted John, home safe. He doesn't know yet. Are you all right? It took 4 minutes for the reply, home. Brother is watching me like I'm a flight risk. How are you? I typed back, the same. I meant what I said. His response was a single word, and it was enough. Good. Music rises slightly, something tense, low, with a thread of warmth in it. We maintained the secret for 4 months. 4 months of stolen weekends in neutral cities. Portland once more. Denver. Twice in a small Oregon town with nothing remarkable about it except that neither of our families had ever had reason to go there. 4 months of encrypted messages and carefully crafted lies and the specific, exhausting vigilance of loving someone you're not allowed to love. Every time I left for a run or a solo territory check or the various other things I had trained myself to say without pause, I felt the weight of what I was doing to my pack. To my father. To the loyalty I had been built on. Every time I saw John's face when I arrived, that controlled, careful expression giving way to something open and real the moment our eyes met, I understood why I was doing it anyway. Love is a very specific kind of madness. The kind where you can see exactly what you're risking and you keep reaching anyway, because the alternative, the safe, empty alternative, feels like a smaller death. We talked about everything in those 4 months. Not just the good things. The hard things too. The history. Generations of it. His great-grandfather taking Nightborn territory in the 1920s. My grandfather retaliating. The war that followed, not a human war, nothing that made the papers, but a war that left scars on both packs that had never healed. Every killing answered with a killing. Every wound met with a wound. 300 years of violence and grief calcified into law. Does any of it make sense to you? I asked him once. We were walking through trees outside the Oregon town, in human form, in the late October cold, our breath making small clouds. The war. He thought about it seriously, the way he thought about serious things. Parts of it. At the beginning, there were legitimate territory disputes. Real resource conflicts. The kind of things packs go to war over. He paused. But now? Now we're killing each other because we've always killed each other. It's just momentum. Momentum, I said. That's a terrifying word for it. It is. what would you call it? A waste, I said. 300 years of it. He reached over and took my hand in the dark between the trees, and didn't let go for a long time. A pause. Then the sound of a door opening. Footsteps. On the 2nd of November, my brother Eli followed me. I didn't know until he told me, 3 days later, face white with something that sat between fury and grief. He stood in the doorway of my room at the compound and said it simply, I saw you. In Redmond. With an Ashcroft wolf. Anna, I saw you. The world did not end immediately. But I could feel it starting to, somewhere in the distance. Act 4, The Fire. Sharp silence. Then a single, long exhale. I didn't lie to Eli. I couldn't, not when he was standing in front of me with that expression on his face, not the anger I'd expected but something rawer. Something that looked like he was asking me to tell him he was wrong. Yes, I said. It's true. He closed his eyes. Opened them. The rawness was replaced by something more composed, which was worse. Anna. He is an Ashcroft. Do you understand what father will do if? I understand perfectly, I said. Then why? Because I love him, I said. The words out loud, for the first time to another person. They felt enormous in the small room. Because I have looked at every other option and none of them are him, and I am not willing to pretend I haven't found something real because it has the wrong last name. Eli stared at me. For a long moment he said nothing, and I could see him running the calculations the same way I had, the law, the history, our father's rage, the pack. You could die for this, he said finally. Quietly. I know, I said. Eli. I held his gaze. Are you going to tell him? The longest pause of my life. No, he said finally. Not tonight. He looked at me with an expression I didn't have a name for. But Anna, you need to think about what you're building, and what it costs everyone around you when it falls. Because it will fall. It always falls. He left without another word. Music shifts. Something urgent. An undercurrent of danger. I called John that night. He answered on the first ring. My brother knows, I said, keeping my voice flat and steady. A silence. Then his voice, very controlled. Mine too. Marcus confronted me an hour ago. He doesn't know it's you specifically. But he knows it's a Nightborn. He has the scent. How long do we have? Days. Maybe less. My father is coming from Seattle. His father. Gareth Ashcroft, the alpha of the Northern Pack. A man my father had tried to kill twice and failed. Which had made them both more dangerous and less reasonable. The worst possible person to be moving toward this situation. Mine doesn't know yet, I said. But Eli won't hold it forever. He'll think he's protecting me. I pressed my hand against the wall, feeling its solidity. John, if our fathers find each other before we can. There will be a war, he said. Flat. Not catastrophizing. Just true. There will be a war, I agreed. Another silence, and in it I could feel us both thinking through the same impossible geometry. We could disappear, leave the packs, leave the territories, build a life somewhere neither family could easily reach. Wolves had done it before. They survived, mostly. But they lost everything. Pack, family, the bone-deep sense of belonging that wolves need the way humans need air. Or we could go to them. Both of us, together, and tell the truth before the packs found out from someone else and turned it into a declaration of war. Neither option was safe. Neither was clean. What do you want to do? John asked. And I heard it, not what should we do, not what do the laws say, just what do you want? I thought of Eli's face. I thought of my father and the 30 years he'd spent building something. I thought of the 19-year-old packmate we'd buried in the eastern woods and the long row of names on the Nightborn memorial stone. I want to end it, I said. The relationship? He asked carefully. No, I said. The war. A beat. Then a longer one. Then John's voice, quiet and wondering. You think we can? I think we might be the only people who have ever had a reason to try, I said. A Nightborn and an Ashcroft sitting in the same room without one of us bleeding. It's never happened. Not in 300 years. Maybe it means something. Maybe it means we're the ones supposed to do this. Or, he said, it means we're both walking into a room and getting killed. Those two things aren't mutually exclusive, I said. I heard him laugh, that rare, unguarded sound. Then it faded, and what replaced it was something steadier. Resolved. Together? He asked. Together, I said. Sound, the wind again. Something changing in it, almost like a held breath, waiting. We met on neutral ground 2 days later. A cleared field 3 miles from the Oregon-Washington border, chosen because it was equidistant from both territories and had no history attached to it. No blood spilled here. No graves. Just grass and cold sky and trees on all sides, and the two of us standing in the middle of it. Both fathers came. Both brothers came. And every wolf who arrived scented the two of us together before they saw us, and the sound that moved through the assembled packs was something between a growl and silence. My father walked forward alone. He stopped 15 feet from me. He looked at John with an expression I had only seen on his face once before, at my mother's grave. Then he looked at me. Anna, he said. My name with all its weight. Father, I said. And I held his gaze, the way he'd taught me, and I did not look away, because I was his daughter and I was not sorry for the truth. Across the field, Gareth Ashcroft was looking at his son with the same expression. For 30 seconds, no one moved or spoke, and the whole world balanced on an edge I could feel in my bones. Then I spoke. Loudly enough for every wolf on that field to hear. I am Anna Nightborn, daughter of the Alpha, born to this pack and loyal to it with everything I have. And I am telling you, all of you, that I love John Ashcroft, and that I am not willing to pretend I don't, and that this war we have been fighting for 300 years has cost us all more than it has ever been worth. Silence. I kept going. I know what the law says. I know what I'm risking. I'm standing here anyway, because I believe that what John and I found, in a coffee shop in Portland, on neutral ground, without history between us, is evidence that this does not have to continue. That we can be different from what we were built to be. I looked at my father. I am asking you to let it end here. Not as your enemy. As your daughter. Act 5, The Turn. My father was silent for a very long time. I watched him. I watched the 30 years of grief and war move across his face like weather, not hidden, not controlled, just present. My father, who never showed weakness, standing in a field and feeling something he hadn't felt in longer than I could know. Across the field, Gareth Ashcroft had not moved. He was watching John with an expression I couldn't fully read from this distance. But it didn't look like the murderous fury I had prepared for. It looked, God help us, like recognition. John spoke then. He addressed his father directly, and his voice carried the same certainty I had tried for. I am not asking you to forget what we've lost. I am asking you to ask whether losing more is worth it. Because I have sat with a Nightborn wolf for 4 months and she has not tried to kill me once, and I think that might mean something. Someone on the Ashcroft side of the field laughed, a short, involuntary sound immediately suppressed. The same sound John made over a book. You have been lying to me for months, my father said. Yes, I said. Because the truth would have ended before it could begin. And I needed it to begin. And if I tell you to come home, to leave this, then I will grieve it, I said, for the rest of my life. And I will still be your daughter, and I will still be Nightborn. But I will not pretend it didn't happen, and I will not pretend the war is right. My father's jaw tightened. He looked at me. And then he did something I had never seen him do on a field that had anything to do with the Ashcrofts. He looked away. Not in defeat. In thought. In something interior that I couldn't see and couldn't speed up. Gareth Ashcroft's voice came from across the field, deep and measured. Callum. My father turned. 300 years, Gareth said. And what have we got for it? He looked at John. A son who won't lie to my face even when it would save him. And you, his eyes found me, a daughter who walked onto open ground alone. He let that sit for a moment. Maybe that's worth something. Maybe it's worth talking about. The breath I'd been holding. Finally released. It wasn't a peace treaty. I want to be honest about that. It wasn't a handshake and an ending. What it was, two alpha wolves agreeing, for the first time in 300 years, to sit in a room and talk. Not to fight. Not to threaten. To talk. John stood beside me on that field and his hand found mine and I held on to it, and neither of our fathers told us to let go. That was enough, for that day. It was more than enough. Long pause. Warm and bittersweet. The peace talks took 4 months. They were painful and slow, and there were 3 separate nights when I was certain they were about to collapse. My father and Gareth Ashcroft sat across from each other and excavated 300 years of grievances, and it looked sometimes like surgery, necessary, brutal, nothing clean about it. But they talked. They kept talking. On the 1st of March, they signed a ceasefire agreement, not full peace, not yet, but an agreement to stop killing each other while the harder work was done. The first such document between the Nightborn and Ashcroft packs in recorded history. John and I were there when they signed it. We stood in the back of the room, shoulder to shoulder, and said nothing, because there was nothing to say that the moment didn't already contain. Eli shook John's hand afterward. It was stiff and careful and deeply awkward, and afterward Eli told me it felt like shaking hands with the enemy, and I told him that was the whole point, that the enemy was a person, and always had been, and that was the hardest and most important thing to learn. Eli didn't say I was right. But he didn't say I was wrong either. The sound of the coffee shop, distant now. Familiar. Warm. Sometimes I go back to Portland. Sometimes John meets me there. We sit in the same coffee shop, at the window table, he's learned to call ahead and save it, and we drink coffee and argue about books and watch the gray sky over the city and talk about the work still ahead. The real work, the old wounds, the families who lost people who will never be neutral, the young wolves on both sides who grew up with the war as their whole context for the other pack. It's slow. It's hard. There are days when I wonder if we were naive. When the weight of 300 years feels like something we should have known we couldn't lift. Then I look at John across the table, the green eyes, the careful expression that still gives way to something unguarded when he forgets to be afraid, and I think, we didn't start this war. But maybe we're the ones who get to help end it. And that's enough to keep going. They taught me, from the moment I could understand language, that there were 2 things a Nightborn wolf knew. Your pack is everything. And stay away from the Ashcroft wolves. They were right about the first one. Your people, the ones who run with you, who know your scent, who would die for you and you for them, they are everything. I have never stopped believing that. They were wrong about the second. Not because the Ashcroft wolves aren't dangerous. They are. John is the proof of that, dangerous in the best possible way, in the way that makes you reconsider everything you thought was fixed. They were wrong because keeping wolves apart doesn't protect the pack. It just keeps the old story going. The same war with the same ending, told over and over, until someone finally puts down the script and says, this is not the only way this goes. I put down the script. In a coffee shop. On a Tuesday. Over an oat milk latte. A breath. Long hole. The sound of wind through tall pines. Then silence. My name is Anna Nightborn. I am the Alpha's daughter. I am the girl who broke every rule she was ever given. And I would do it all again.